If someone asks us about a semi-auto that's not cycling, we say to them, have you stripped and cleaned it? And that's the first thing that they have to do before they go any further or send it back to us. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean this gun and show you how it should be stripped and cleaned. So I'm going to strip the gun down first, take the fore end nut off. Then the fore end will come off. I'm going to take the barrel off. Okay. Next we want to strip down the action. On the A400 it's got a keyway system to remove the cocking handle. So I have to depress the bolt heads very, very slightly to then remove the bolt handle. Once the bolt handle's out, we can remove the breech bolt. Next thing I'm going to do is remove the trigger. It's got a pin that holds it in place, and I'm just going to knock that pin out. Okay, that's the pin out. To remove the trigger, depress the cartridge latch button and just lift the trigger mech out of the way. Here we can see now that we've got an area we can now clean the inside of the action out. As you can see, it's quite dirty inside. We always say that it should be cleaned after every use. If they're shooting more than 100, then they really need to just strip and clean it, and that way it will stop any non-cycling and the action clogging up with the carbon from the shells. Okay, that's the action, a lot cleaner than it was. You've got inside the action, you can see where the breech bolt runs up and down. That has to be nice and clean, and when we put it back together we will just put a drop of lubricant in that area so the breech bolt can run up and down nice and smooth. Next I'm going to strip down the bolt, take it down to its component parts, clean them off and then put it all back together. So first of all I'm going to remove the pin that holds the striker in. It also holds the rest of the components in place. So there's a slight hole on the other side, and you push the pin out, holding onto the striker, and the spring is removed. Got to remove the lock head pin on the bolt next, which should just come straight out. The bolt head is apart, and that's all we need to clean on there and take apart. These towels are like a wet wipe towel that are actually a degreasing towel. They are damp, and we use them to take all the carbon from the shells off.
People at home then, what would you suggest?
Just some tissue and some oil will do exactly the same. If you do use oil, wipe the bolt dry afterwards, because you don't want too much oil on the area of the bolt. Now I'm going to clean the bolt head. As you can see, it's got a lot of carbon all over it. That's the bolt nice and clean. the lock head pin, retaining spring, and the striker O-ring. Okay, that's all nice and clean. We'll reassemble it now. The bolt head on. The lock head pin. It's got an indicating line. This shows you where the hole is, so you can push the striker in. Hold it in place. Got the locking pin back in. And we can see the striker comes out. So that's completely stripped down, cleaned, and put back together. Next, we're just going to wipe over the trigger mech, make sure that's nice and clean before it all goes back into the action. Okay, there we are. That's been wiped down, all ready for reassemble. Next, we're going to check the piston and the gas ports in the barrel. The piston should move up and down freely. On all these models, they have a piston ring around that should be nice and central. It should be circular and it shouldn't be deformed or bent in any way. This one, although dirty, is okay. So next I'm going to check the gas port in the barrel. On the A400s you have one of these holes which is the gas ports. One of those is open. That hole lets the exhaust from the shell back, pushes the piston and works the complete mechanism. Because of that, you will get the exhaust from the shell back into the action. That's one of the reasons why we clean it. Okay, so we just double check that the hole's nice and clean. We use a long series drill bit just to put into the hole, just to take any carbon deposits away. Okay, and then we will put the piston back in, and as you can see, it's moving up and down freely. The gun's now clean. We're going to reassemble it, lubricate it. This should be done on all Beretta models, from the 391 through to the A400s and the 300 series. This would be exactly the same. Okay, first of all, I want to lubricate the channels where the breech bolt runs up. Now this is only a drop of oil required, and I'm going to drop it down onto the runner, where the runners run up and down, and this should be oil, not grease. Grease is too thick and will bind any dirt in the mechanism and slow the action down, so it's a light oil that's required to go in. Right, I'm going to put the breech bolt in, locate it down. Okay, cocking handle will then go in, so I have to line the keyway up, as you can see there. The keyway, hole, and then push the cocking handle in. I can now then work the breech bolt up and down, and as you can see, there are no restrictions, and it helps bed the lubricant in. Next, I'm going to put the trigger mech back in. Okay, we do it with the hammer cocked. I press the cartridge latch button because it makes it easier to go in. Once that's in, I can then push the pin back in to hold the trigger mech in place. I can then again work it back up and down to make sure that it all's well and good. By pressing the little button on the underside, that will then lock the breech bolt back to make it easier to put the barrel onto the action. Next I grab the barrel and carefully align it into place, fore endward, and then the fore end nut. Okay, that's the action then cleaned and ready to go for next time.